I'm Amy. I have been a long-time volunteer, former board member, and now storyteller for Mental Health America of Central Carolinas. One of the ways I've ignited my own superpower is finding my voice, stepping out, and becoming my authentic self. Here's my story. My story is about silence and stigma and stubbornness. And currently, silence is no longer cutting it. So now I'd like to speak up and be seen for who I am. Brain damaged, drama queen, crazy, sensitive, lowest rung on a ladder, poor childless woman, lunatic, fruitcake, nut bar, typical, crazy Amy. I could go on, but I think you get the point. All of these things I've been called repeatedly in my life since I was a kid. Now I'm 47, and imagine just for a second how many times I've heard some of those cute nicknames. But are they cute? You know, let's get real for just a second. Those names, labels, they're born out of stigma associated with mental illness. And crazy is not a pet name for a person with depression. And lunatic is not a pet name for someone who suffers from anxiety and severe panic attacks. And drama queen is not a pet name for an overly sensitive child, now adult. My whole life, I've been trying to prove to myself and to others that I wasn't all of those things that people called me. But words are powerful. They became my labels. They kept me down and silent and enveloped me in my own personal stigma. You know, as much as those labels followed me, they haunted me, searching for validation sent me on an opposite course. You know, in order to separate myself from my labels, from my own personal stigma, I began to achieve things in my life, overachieving, more like overcompensating. So this is what the world saw: an award-winning actress, an entrepreneur, a small business leader, a college graduate, cum laude, board member, media creator for Fortune 500 companies, director, teacher. There wasn't anything that I couldn't do. But this is what was really going on. I was self-medicating because I couldn't afford my medication, and nor did I really think I needed it. I was drinking way too much. I was searching for validation and love on the outside, trying desperately to fit in, making terrible choices. I was trying to fit in anywhere I could. I was depressed, isolated, bedridden, and a puddle on the floor most nights. But somehow I still kept achieving. I have suffered from depression, low self-esteem, non-existent self-worth, and anxiety since I was about 14. You know, I need help, and I've needed help for a really long time, but I never really got it consistently, and I was really embarrassed that I couldn't do it on my own, and I ignored for years that my mental illness was actually affecting my life. I was embarrassed that I wasn't perfect, I was stubborn, and I was in a stigma with mental illness. It couldn't be me. I live with an imposter mentality. I was afraid to be seen, fearful of what people would think if I told my story, fearful of being found out. You know, my story doesn't compare to the pain that others have suffered, and my story wasn't really worth being told. I was afraid that if I spoke up, I would become what everybody thought of me. Oh, that's just crazy Amy, the drama queen. You know, looking back, this constant fear shoved my authentic self so far down deep that I had no idea who I was or what I was. I thought that I was pretty good at suffering in silence, managing my fear, my depression, anxiety, all on my own, willing it away, stubbornly trying to hide from it, until I had a massive breakdown a year into my marriage. Let me point out, hiding mental illness when you're single is totally different than hiding it when you're married. You can't. So finally, at 44 years old, there was no place for me to hide. No camera, no character, no project, no accomplishment, no rock, nothing I could hide behind. My husband, my new husband, and 8-year-old stepdaughter were gonna be the first to find out just how sick I really was, or the second. Because for days, I couldn't get out of bed. I could not stop crying. I couldn't breathe. I was in really bad shape. I mean, in truth, my panic attacks had been happening daily for years, and they were getting worse. But I was too tired to hide anymore. I was too tired to fight. And I was too tired to care. My husband said to me in the most supported way that he could, he's an engineer, "You need to get some help. You can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. You can choose whether you end up like your family or you fight." So I'm telling you, I chose to fight. I choose to fight daily. And lately it's hard, especially with the pandemic and everything that's happening in the world. It's a struggle. But what I did was I got a life coach. I started doing the inner work. I started leaning in to change, learning to love myself little by little. And that's still a process. I'm addressing my self-imposed stigma regarding medication. I now take it. And I became a life coach and a Reiki master, and now I help others conquer their own fears. I wake up most every day choosing to be a victor, not a victim. And now I no longer fear the labels. I embody them. And I no longer fear the depression. I embrace it. And I no longer fear the anxiety. I acknowledge it for what it's trying to teach me about my body and my boundaries. I no longer fear being found out because, hi everybody, this is me, Amy. I am a victor. I am no longer a victim of my life. Of course, I am still terrified, but it's a different kind of fear. It's a motivating, inspiring, exhilarating, you can do anything kind of fear. So this is me fighting, telling my story. This is my authentic self, and I'm refusing to be silent anymore. So these labels are now my superpowers. They're not my cross to bear. I encourage all of you to fight with me now. You know, don't wait decades, as I did. Acknowledge that your story is worth being told, that you're worth it, and don't be afraid to be seen or heard, because courage is contagious. Courage is contagious. And I tell my story now because of the strength that I've gained by being surrounded by the amazing storytellers that have gone before me. I do this now in most part because my involvement with the MHA. Because over the years, I've heard some pretty amazing stories. I've filmed them. I've watched people tell their stories, become their authentic selves, and it's so courageous. So I do this now because I am not afraid to acknowledge that I am 1 in 5 who live with a chronic mental illness and that it affects my life. You know, we are all the one. There is no shame in sharing. There is no shame in being seen and heard and being your authentic self. So when the minority becomes the majority, stigma related to mental illness will be erased. But the first place you really need to look in order to break that stigma is within yourself, like I did. The world needs to hear your story now more than ever. So no matter how insignificant you think it might be, tell your story. I may not be where I want to be, but at least I'm not where I was. I am actually a survivor of years of mental abuse, a survivor of major ancestral trauma, a survivor of domestic violence, a survivor of depression, a survivor of low self-esteem. And my new label is Courageous Superhero. And I have some pretty amazing superpowers, and they're called anxiety and depression. So courage is contagious. And I hope that, you know, the courage that I've gained from the MHA storytellers that went before me, and by telling my story today, this will give you courage to tell your story tomorrow. Let's choose to wake up to be a victor. If you need help, you gotta reach out. You're not broken. You're beautifully and wonderfully made. You too are a courageous superhero. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Turn all your negative labels into your own personal superpowers.
Thank you for watching my story.